Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video, Core Pick live stream for today, Monday, June 26th. So the way that I'm going to structure today's video is going to be doing a little bit of a weather report. We got no recap since we haven't had a video since Friday. I am going to go over to my cheat sheet first with the top GPP teams to stack today. That cheat sheet is 100% free. It is up on Facebook. It's up on Twitter. It's up on the YouTube community tab. So definitely be sure to check that out as you're building your lineups out today. If you want some more in-depth notes, be sure to check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports. Small monthly donation over there. A little bit more in-depth breakdown in terms of pitchers, in terms of hitter versus pitcher matchups, maybe other teams to stack on a daily basis. So that's kind of where we're at. It's a 6-game main slate today. I'm going to go over to FanDuel, talk a little bit more about the slate in totality today, since it's a little bit smaller slate. And since there's not a lot of history with a lot of these hitters and pitcher matchups today, or a lot of standout players just in general. So we're going to start off with that weather report. So right now, the only two games that look like have any weather concern are going to be the Cincinnati and Baltimore game, and Baltimore 78% chance of rain, and the Milwaukee and New York Mets game, which has a 56% chance of rain. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of weather report. If anything majorly does change throughout the day, we'll leave that down in the comments. So definitely make sure you're looking at that as we do get closer to lock. But with that being said, we're going to stop sharing that. We're going to go straight over to the cheat sheet for today, the bottom half for the top GPP teams to stack. So the three teams that I do have, I only have three today since it's a smaller slate. Like I did mention, not a lot of history in general, but I have the Texas Rangers going against Matthew Boyd. Some pretty decent history here. The two starts that he's had versus them in the past 2 years, 18 points and -5 points. So definitely a team that we can get on today. Probably going to be a pretty popular team just in general. And then that Reds and Orioles game, I like both sides of that. Obviously, if that game does go off, so there's some rain expectations there. Neither pitcher has faced the opposing team before, so we don't really have that long history or that track record that we look for on many slates. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of that. I'm going to go over, like I said, go over to FanDuel and just kind of talk wider view of the whole slate since it's only 6 games in general. So we're going to look at the pitcher position. Was just looking up Jordan Westburg because they did say that they added him, who is being called up today for Baltimore. Wanted to see what his price tag was since they had that note there. But in terms of the pitchers today, going to be an interesting slate. I think there's a couple different options that we can go with today, but we're looking at Spencer Strider. He's got no history in his past versus Minnesota. Obviously had the bad start versus the New York Mets, and then kind of another mediocre start, but rebounded nicely the last time out. Averaging 42 fantasy points per game on the season. Going to be a very good play and probably a very popular play probably once again today, since the Twins are one of the teams that does strike out the most in all of baseball. Luis Castillo, last time out, he really didn't help us too much. Obviously actually hurt us. So averaging about 35 fantasy points, $10,600. Decent history in the past, although it's a little bit limited sample size versus the Washington Nationals. Had 32 points versus them last season. Sonny Gray, against Atlanta, not too much history there. A little bit hit or miss. That matchup could definitely go either way. So if you want to stack the Braves, this makes some sense. If you want to attack Sonny Gray, you could. Obviously, he had the hot start to the year, but it's kind of cooled off since then. Dylan Cease is a guy that's pitched extremely well as of late. Some pretty limited history versus the Angels, but last year he did have 62 points versus them. So he's probably my favorite play at pitcher today. If I was doing a core pick, probably end up being him, although I do think Spencer Strider is a very good play and going to be very popular today. Andrew Heaney is a little bit of a sneaky play against Detroit. Not too much history there. Reed Detmers has pitched really well his last couple starts. Going against the White Sox should be a favorable matchup, but the White Sox still have the ability to hit left-handed pitching pretty well. So a little bit hit or miss there. $8,500. Definitely worth taking a shot on in some lineups, especially in GPP format. Justin Verlander at $8,100 still has decent upside going against Milwaukee, a team that has struggled quite a bit offensively too. So that it is opportunities for that to pay off. He's probably going to be pretty popular, especially if that game does not get rained out. And then Matthew Boyd, like I said, I want to stack against him with the Texas Rangers. Although his last two starts have been relatively decent, and if you get that type of performance out of him at $7,700, there is room for it to pay off. So maybe a potential contrarian play, but somebody I'm probably not getting to myself personally today. Trevor Williams would probably be my cheap paydown option if I had to go with one, under $8,000, $7,400. Going against Seattle, there is strikeout potential there, although Williams isn't a guy that really strikes out a ton of batters. Doesn't have too much history against Seattle, although Eugenio Suarez has hit 3 home runs off him, and Colton Wong is 8 for 21 with a home run off him, but Colton Wong hasn't done much this season. And then, you get down to Colin Rea, you get down to Brandon Williamson, and you get down to Cole Irvin, probably the guys that you're better off stacking against than playing in your lineups today. And then obviously we have that risk of rain in that Cincinnati and Baltimore game overall. So that's kind of where we're at pitcher today. Mainly playing Spencer Strider. I'll play a good chunk of Dylan Cease, maybe a couple of shares of Reed Detmers and Justin Verlander here and there, maybe a shot at Andrew Heaney. I'm not sure if I'm getting to Luis Castillo or Sonny Gray at this point in time, but maybe mixing in one or two of them here and there as well. At first base slash catcher, Matt Olson, he is the most expensive guy in this position, $4,300. Been off to a really good start, or a really good recent history, I should say, at least 2 for 5 versus Sonny Gray. So he is somebody that I would consider playing. If you're playing him and Spencer Strider, your money's going to get a little bit tight. Pete Alonso's rebounded pretty well since coming back, so don't really have too many concerns versus him. Versus Colin Rea, could be a decent matchup there if Rea is unable to keep the ball down or has his cutter working pretty effectively. So he is somebody to look at. Sean Murphy, probably not getting to. Spencer Steer, I think, is pretty interesting. He's been really good as of late, $3,300. You can play him at outfield. You can play him at first base. So a lot of versatility there. Going to be a pretty good guy to stack in your red stacks today if that game does go off against Cole Irvin, who is a lefty pitcher. Jonah Heim, you could probably mix and match in some Texas stacks here and there. Same thing with Nate Lowe. Nothing that you really want to highlight too much with them. Heim doesn't really have too much good history versus Matthew Boyd, so probably not a guy that I'm getting to a lot. Joey Votto, $3,100. If you want to mix them into some red stacks, you can do it. Brandon Drury, going against Dylan Cease, probably not getting there too often today myself. Mitch Garver, 5-15 with 1 home run in his career versus Matthew Boyd. So could be a good guy if he ends up in that starting lineup for Texas today. Obviously, out of the Russian, you can throw into some Orioles stacks. Looks like Mountcastle's on the aisle now with an illness, so not worried about him. Let's see as we keep moving down here. Let's see. So Andrew Vaughn at $2,900, kind of interesting going against the left-handed pitcher. Obviously, Detmers has pitched pretty well lately. That matchup can go either way, but if you're building out some White Sox stacks, could play him. Probably not getting to like William Contreras, Joey Meneses. Tyler Stevenson and some red stacks makes some sense. If you want to go against Justin Verlander chalk, which I assume is today, maybe you play a little bit of Rowdy Tellez. Definitely has some power potential there at a cheap price tag. Francisco Alvarez, if you want to play him in a Met stack, makes some sense. Let's see as we get down here. Cal Raleigh, if you want to get there, makes a little bit of sense if you're doing like a Mariners stack. It's probably not getting too much today. Matt Tice does have a home run versus Dylan Cease, so I will mention that, but obviously you have to make sure he's in the starting lineup for that one. Not too much here. Mike Moustakas, first base and third base eligible, is cheap if he ends up in that starting lineup. Tougher matchup against Dylan Cease, though. Daniel Vogelbach, if he ends up starting, $2,400, offers a little bit of power. He has Monty Grindal. If you want to play him against the lefty and Reed Detmers, you could do that. So that's probably where we're at in terms of first base and catcher at this point in time. Moving now over to second base. Second base is kind of like the hardest position for me today overall. For the cheat sheet, I do have Marcus Semien at the top, but he's only like 1 for 8 versus Matthew Boyd in his career. But definitely could turn around on any given slate. Ozzie Albies not really history there versus Sonny Gray. But if you want to play him in a Braves stack, makes some sense. Jonathan India in that Cincinnati stack would make a lot of sense. I think he's one of the better hitters and one of the guys that doesn't draw quite as much ownership as like an Ellie De La Cruz, who's at a pretty high price tag at this point in time. If you want to mix in Ezekiel Duran, if he starts for Texas, you can do that. Eduardo Julian, if you're trying to go against Spencer Strider and you do like a twin stack, obviously large field GPP, if you're like 50 max and 150 max or something like that, would make a little bit of sense there. Let's see. As we keep moving down, Jeff McNeil in a Met stack makes some sense. Not too much here at second base. If you're playing a Baltimore stack and you want to throw a Ramon Urias in there, if you're playing, a Brewers stack against Verlander, if you want to throw in, like an Owen Miller or Luis Urias is a cheap option there. They're available. And then we just keep moving down, and it's nothing too exciting here at second base today. The other guy I just want to mention is Colton Long at $2,000. If he ends up starting, he could be pretty interesting since he does have good history versus Trevor Williams in the past, although it's been a really, really rough start to the year for him overall. So that's kind of second base in a nutshell. Probably just getting to a lot of Jonathan India and just kind of mixing and matching some random pieces here as kind of filler, just depending on how much money is left available at that point in time. I did mention Ellie De La Cruz. He's been really good to start his career, but at $4,700, third base, shortstop eligible. He's really, really expensive at this point in time. So I think he's going to be really popular still if that game does end up going off. Josh Jung, definitely like him. He is 1-for-2 versus Matthew Boyd in his career. Austin Riley offers a little bit of upside versus Sonny Gray. Not too much history there, though. Gunnar Henderson, if you're playing some Baltimore stacks, makes some sense. Jake Berger in the righty and lefty matchup is a kind of contrarian play. Don't think he's going to be too popular today, but if you're building out some White Sox stacks, it does make a little bit of sense there. Let's see as we keep going down. Eugenio Suarez, like I mentioned, he has 3 home runs in his career versus Trevor Williams, only hitting 240 versus him, but that power potential at $2,600 makes him a pretty good value play if you want to go there. Keep going down. Let's see. We got Brian Anderson. If you probably not playing him in a Brewer stack, even though Mike Moustakas we already talked about. So most of these guys we already talked about. Eduardo Escobar for the Angels had a pretty good first game with them. He's only $2,200 if he ends up starting. Tougher matchup against Dylan Cease, but kind of a pay down option if you want to get there. If you want to play an Angels stack and hope it pays off against Cease, which I'm not betting on too much today though. And then as we keep moving down, shortstop, Corey Seager is going to be probably my favorite pay up option here. He does have a home run earlier this season versus Matthew Boyd, so definitely like that as we are talking through it. Matt McLean, if you want to throw him in red stacks, makes some sense. I like Francisco Lindor in this matchup against Colin Rea, but Met stack could make some sense, or even as a one of. We already talked about Gunnar Henderson. Willie Adames, if you're really trying to go in against that Verlander stack, could make some sense, some power potential there, but very hit or miss. So, a high-end, high upside GPP option. JP Crawford is back at this point in time, $2,800. Not the worst hitting at the top of the lineup there, but how much does that shoulder injury affect him? Jorge Mateo is somebody that I do have a little bit of interest in if that game does go off. We can talk about Jordan Westberg behind him at $2,600. Probably going to be pretty popular since he's a top prospect getting called up for the first time. And, reasonably cheap price tag, so people are going to be excited to play him, especially on a smaller slate. Not really too much else interesting here at that shortstop position. So mainly getting over to outfield at this point in time. Nothing too crazy here. If anybody does have any specific questions, going to be a really good day to mix and match. Obviously, that weather is going to play a major factor as we move throughout the day, though. In the outfield, Ronald Acuna 2-for-7 versus Sonny Gray, so definitely like him either as a one of or in a Brave stack once again. If you really want to play Shohei Ohtani, you could. He's 2-for-8 with 1 home run versus Dylan Cease in his career. Mike Trout, not the greatest history there. Adolis Garcia, a little bit of hit or miss history versus Matthew Boyd in the past, but do like the upside that he does present. Julio Rodriguez could offer some upside as well versus Trevor Williams. Not really getting to Cedric Mullins, even in some Baltimore stacks at $3,600, a little bit overpriced for me. Lane Thomas is 3-for-10 versus Luis Castillo in his career, but $3,500 is quite a price tag for him just in general. So probably not getting there. Let's see as we keep moving down. Talked about Spencer Steer already. Christian Yelich you could play if you're going in a stack against Verlander. Jake Fraley, going in the lefty on lefty matchup might not even end up starting, so I'll mention that. Anthony Santander is one of my favorite if I'm doing a Baltimore stack today. If we run out a White Sox stack, Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, both going to be very much in play. Leota Taveras is 2-for-3 in his career versus Matthew Boyd, so there is some upside there if you're playing a Texas Rangers stack, but $3,100, a little bit more than I like to pay for him. If you're running out that Met stack, then obviously Brandon Nimmo is going to make some sense at $3,100 hit leading off once again. Austin Hayes, you can mix the match in some Baltimore stacks. Typically hits left-handed pitching pretty well. Let's see as we keep moving down here. Marcell Ozuna has been hitting the ball pretty well. Not too much history versus Sonny Gray though. Let's see as we keep moving down. Maybe TJ Friedel and Cincinnati Red stack, but not too much here at this point in time. You can play Starlin Marte at $2,800. Not a bad price tag in a Met stack. If you want to play Tommy Pham in that same Met stack, you could. Ezekiel Duran, we already talked about. There's not too much down here in terms of cheap plays. If you really want to go against Spencer Strider and hope Max Kepler hits a home run off him, you could do that at $2,700, but a little bit risky there at that point in time. Benintendi maybe in a White Sox stack. Joey Wiemer's pretty cheap, so if you're going against Verlander, you could just throw him into that Mets stack. Stuart Fairchild, if he ends up starting, is an interesting play at $2,600, ready on lefty matchups. So I do assume that he starts over Jake Fraley tonight, though. Obviously, if that game ends up going off, though. Nick Senzel could be interesting if he ends up getting the start for the Reds as well. Joey Gallo is worth a shot at $2,500. Tough matchup against Spencer Strider, though. Might end up with 3 Ks and a home run, though. Matt Verlaine, I think, is a little bit interesting here and going in the matchup against Andrew Heaney, but there wasn't too many cheap options today, if I'm being honest. So that's kind of where I'm at for the most part. If you guys have any more specific questions, if you want to throw Jesse Winker in there at $2,300, going against Verlander and that Brewer stack or just a fill in, he's a cheap guy at the very least who's kind of looking to bounce back in a big way, but hasn't done it so far this season. Clint Frazier's another guy, $2,100. If he ends up getting a start against the lefty, could be an interesting play. Really hit or miss play though. But that's kind of what I got. Like I said, a little bit different structure today, looking at the slate more in totality. If you guys have any specific MLB DFS questions whatsoever, feel free to drop them down in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. I'll leave any other weather updates down there, as well as the starting lineups for today as they do come out. So definitely be sure you're checking up on that as we get closer to lock. But with that being said, that's really all that I do have at this point in time for this video. If you're checking it out for the very first time, would ask that you do subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy the content that I am putting out. Definitely means a lot to me. Hopefully, at the same, helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it is primarily MLB DFS and USFL DFS. We got the USFL DFS championship game this weekend, so we'll be covering that on Friday. And then I had a couple requests for CFL DFS, so I'm doing a little bit of a project on that. Might be doing some content in that in the near future as well. But with that being said, that's really all that I do have at this point in time. Be sure to look out for the MLB prop of the day later today. Will be up on my Twitter. Might start making some videos for that too, just kind of a short video to go over the prop that I do like on the specific day. Last week we were able to go 3-0 on there, so definitely be sure to check that out and be sure to sign up over on Prize Picks, Parlay Play, and BetUS. All the links are down in the description below, and I'll post that prop of the day down in the comments as well. But with that being said, that's all I have for this point in time. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you taking the time out of your day, whether you're tuning in live or on replay. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.